Emma had always believed that love was something you could count on, something that would endure, even through the darkest moments. But now, every glance Daniel gave her felt like a judgment, every word he spoke carried a weight she hadn't noticed before. It was as if a wall had slowly risen between them, one she didn't know how to break through. The first real crack came 2 weeks after the park incident. Daniel had been unusually quiet, distant, and on that Saturday morning, he'd said something that made Emma's blood run cold. "Maybe you're right," Daniel had said, glancing at her as they sat at breakfast. "Maybe I have been overworked. I've noticed it too. I think it might be time for a change." Emma had looked at him in confusion. A change? What kind of change? He met her gaze, his face unreadable. "I don't know. Maybe I need to spend more time with my family. I feel like things are slipping." At first, she had assumed he was referring to work. But then, as the days wore on, she realized he wasn't talking about work at all. He was talking about her. The change was subtle at first. Daniel started coming home later, not with an apology or an excuse, but with a quiet detachment. He no longer kissed her when he returned from work. Instead, he kissed the children's foreheads and went straight to his office. Emma tried to confront him, to reach him, but every time she opened her mouth, he seemed to distance himself more. One evening, as they sat in the living room, Daniel turned to her and said, "You know, I've been thinking. Maybe you're right about some things. You've been on edge lately." Emma froze. "On edge? What are you talking about?" "You know, the tension. The arguments. The way you blow up at small things." He paused, as if searching for the right words. "Maybe I've been too patient. Maybe I should have addressed it sooner." Emma's chest tightened. "So now it's my fault?" Daniel's voice was calm, almost too calm. "I'm just saying, maybe we've been ignoring the real issue. Maybe you and I just aren't on the same page anymore." Emma felt her heart sink. The real issue. It was the same phrase Margaret had used in her letters, the same words she had planted in Daniel's mind. The next few days were filled with an eerie quiet. Emma's mind raced, trying to understand what had changed. She went over their conversations, their interactions, the moments where she had felt his distance, but she couldn't pinpoint when it all started. Then one afternoon, she found the letter. It wasn't one of Margaret's unsent letters this time, but a new one, freshly typed. It was addressed to Daniel, but it was unmistakable. "Daniel, you've been so strong, but I can see the weight of everything on you. You've been giving everything to your wife and children, and where has it gotten you? You've been stretched thin, pulled in so many directions. You need to look after yourself, my dear. You deserve to be with someone who respects you, who doesn't make you feel like you're not enough. I see how tired you are. It's time to consider what's best for you." The letter had the same signature as Margaret's handwriting. Her words, her influence. And it wasn't just the words, it was the timing. Daniel had been saying the exact same things. The tension between Emma and Daniel reached its peak that night. They sat at the kitchen table, the children already in bed, the quiet hum of the house making everything feel even more unbearable. "I've been thinking," Daniel said, his voice unusually soft. "I think we need to talk about our future. About us." Emma's pulse raced. "What do you mean?" "Maybe we should take some time apart. Just to see if we're really meant to be together." Her breath caught in her throat. "Time apart." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yeah. I mean, it's not that I don't love you. But I think we've both been holding on to something that's not working anymore." Emma's mind spun. This couldn't be happening. He was repeating the very words Margaret had written to him. She could feel the suffocating grip of his mother's influence pressing in on them. "You're serious?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "You really think we need to separate?" Daniel looked away, his eyes avoiding hers. "Maybe it's for the best. Maybe we just need space." Emma's heart broke, but she didn't cry. She couldn't. She had to fight, to hold on to whatever was left. "No, Daniel," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We're not doing this. We're not giving up." He raised an eyebrow. "And what makes you think that's your decision to make?" The words stung, like a slap to her face. She had never felt so utterly alone in her own marriage. She had always believed that together, they could face anything. But now, it seemed as though they were both on opposite sides of a chasm, one that was widening with every passing day. That night, as Emma lay in bed beside Daniel, she stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. The words from the letter, from Daniel, from Margaret, they all blended together in a maddening swirl of doubt and fear. Was this it? Was this the end? She reached over and touched Daniel's hand, her fingers brushing against his, but he didn't stir. The silence between them had never been louder. Emma felt something inside of her snap. The marriage she had built, the love she had nurtured, it was slipping away. But she wouldn't give up without a fight. She couldn't. She had to save her family. She had to save her marriage. But first, she had to reclaim her voice. Emma had never been one for confrontation. She had always believed in letting things work themselves out, in quietly shouldering the burdens of her marriage, her family. But now, the silence that had settled between her and Daniel, the cold distance between them, was no longer something she could ignore. She couldn't let this go. Not anymore. That afternoon, she stood in front of Margaret's bedroom door, her hand raised to knock, but it faltered. Her heart hammered in her chest, and the letters, all the cruel words, filled her mind. She will never care for you like I do. A wife's love is never enough. You deserve more than her. Margaret had been in her life for years, silently pulling the strings, and now Emma felt as if the very foundation of her marriage was slipping through her fingers. But she had to know the truth. Had to hear it from Margaret's lips. She knocked. The door creaked open. Margaret stood there, her expression neutral as always, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of recognition, a knowing, that sent a chill down Emma's spine. "Emma," she said softly, stepping back to allow her in. "What's this about? Is everything all right?" Emma stepped inside, her voice trembling despite herself. "No, everything is not all right." Margaret's eyes narrowed, but she didn't move. "What are you talking about?" "I know what you've been doing," Emma said, her voice rising with each word. "The letters, Margaret. I've read them." For a moment, the room was silent. Margaret didn't speak, didn't move. It was as if she were deciding whether to deny it, or to let Emma believe the truth. Finally, she spoke, her tone icy. "You've read them, have you?" "Yes," Emma said, her anger beginning to rise. "I've read every single one. I know what you've been saying about me to Daniel. You've been poisoning him, Margaret. You've been telling him to leave me, to choose you over me. And now look where we are." Margaret's lips curled into a tight smile. "You've misunderstood, Emma. I was only trying to protect my son." "Protect him?" Emma repeated, her voice incredulous. "By tearing us apart? By feeding him lies about me?" Margaret took a slow step toward her, her presence as commanding as ever. "You think this is about you? About your marriage? No. This is about Daniel's future. I've spent my life taking care of him, making sure he becomes the man he's supposed to be. And you," she paused, as if choosing her words carefully. "You don't have the strength to hold him, Emma. You never did." Emma's heart pounded in her chest. "She never did." "You don't understand," Margaret continued, her voice growing colder. "I know Daniel better than anyone. I see what he needs. You've spent so many years trying to hold him in this fragile, happy home you've built for yourselves, but it's not enough. He needs more, Emma. He needs someone who understands him, who truly sees him for who he is." "I do understand him," Emma said fiercely, stepping closer. "I know him better than anyone else ever will. And if you'd stop interfering, if you'd just let us be." Margaret's laugh was sharp and cutting, like glass shattering. "Let you be? That's the problem, Emma. You're so busy trying to convince yourself that you're the right woman for him. But you're not. You never were." Emma felt a pang of hurt, deep in her chest, but she refused to let it show. This wasn't the time for weakness. "Why, Margaret?" Emma asked, her voice trembling but strong. "Why have you done this? Why can't you just let us be happy?" Margaret's expression shifted for just a moment, something almost like guilt passed over her features. But then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. "I did it for him," she said, her voice softening, but with an underlying coldness. "I did it because I love him. Because he's my son. And no one, not you, not anyone, is going to take him away from me." Emma stared at her, shocked, her chest tight with fury and sorrow. "You've ruined everything, Margaret. You've torn us apart." Margaret took another step forward, her eyes locking with Emma's. "You think this is my fault?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous. "No, Emma. You and Daniel were already falling apart long before I came into the picture. I only opened your eyes to what you refused to see. He's not the man you thought he was. And you are not the woman who can hold him." Emma's head spun with disbelief. This is your idea of love," she spat. "It's not about love, Emma," Margaret said, her voice growing cold again. "It's about control. About knowing what's best. And I know what's best for Daniel. I've always known." Emma shook her head, her throat tight with anger. "You don't know him at all." Margaret's eyes flickered, just for a moment. But then she smiled. "Maybe. But I know how to make him see the truth. And if you can't keep up with that, well, maybe it's time to let him go." Emma felt her heart break. Every word, every accusation, it all came rushing at her like a tidal wave. She had fought for this marriage, for Daniel, for her family, and Margaret had been slowly tearing it apart from the inside. For the first time, Emma realized that there was no reasoning with Margaret. No compromise. No way to win. But Emma was done running. "I'll fight for my family," she said, her voice steady with determination. "And if that means I have to fight you too, then so be it." The following days after Emma's confrontation with Margaret were some of the hardest she had ever faced. Every word, every accusation, every painful truth Margaret had laid bare echoed in her mind. Emma couldn't escape them, couldn't escape the thought that perhaps, just perhaps, there was some truth in what Margaret had said. Daniel had hardly spoken to her since the argument with his mother. His presence was there, but he was distant, like a stranger in their home. The familiar warmth of their connection, the small gestures of affection that had once defined their marriage, had disappeared into the cold air of silence. Emma spent her days trying to hold it together for the children, pretending that everything was fine when nothing felt fine. She cleaned, she cooked, she helped with homework, but inside, her heart was breaking. She had fought for this family for so long, fought to build something beautiful, something lasting, and now it felt as though it was slipping through her fingers, piece by piece. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening, just after dinner. The children had gone to bed, and the house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Emma stood in the kitchen, her hands still warm from washing the dishes, when she heard Daniel's footsteps behind her. She didn't turn around. She knew what was coming. "Emma," he said quietly. She didn't answer. "I think we need to talk." His voice sounded strained, like he was carrying a weight that was too heavy for him. Emma's heart raced. She had been waiting for this moment, the moment where they would face the truth. She had avoided it, clung to the hope that things would somehow fix themselves, but now, she couldn't avoid it any longer. She turned to face him, her back straight, her jaw clenched. "I think we do." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Daniel stood in the doorway, his hands shoved into his pockets, looking at the floor. Emma could see the tension in his posture, the way his shoulders were stiff with unresolved emotions. "Emma," Daniel began, his voice rough. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened, about us. And I know things haven't been the same lately. I can feel it too. The distance between us." Emma nodded, her chest tight. "I feel it too." "I've been talking to my mom, about everything," Daniel said, his voice quieter now. "And she's right about some things." Emma's breath caught. "What are you saying, Daniel?" He looked up at her, his eyes filled with sadness. "I've been thinking, Emma. Maybe she's right. Maybe we're just not the right fit for each other anymore." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She felt the room spin, her vision blurry. You believe her? After everything we've been through? After everything we've built together, you're just going to give up on us?" Daniel shook his head. "No, Emma. It's not that simple. But I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to fix us." Emma felt tears sting her eyes, but she forced them back. She wouldn't cry. She couldn't. Not when everything was on the line. "I've tried so hard, Daniel," she whispered. "I've tried to make this work. I've given everything to this family. And now it feels like it's all falling apart, and I don't know what to do anymore." Daniel stepped closer, his hand reaching out as if to touch her, but Emma pulled back, unable to bear the distance between them. "I don't know what to do either," he said softly. "I don't know if we can fix this." Emma's heart shattered in that moment. She had fought for this marriage, for Daniel, for their family. But now she realized something: she couldn't fix this alone. She couldn't make him see what they had if he was determined to listen to his mother instead of her. "I love you, Daniel," she said, her voice breaking. "But I can't keep fighting like this. I can't keep fighting for a marriage that you're not willing to fight for." Daniel's face softened, but he didn't move toward her. "I never wanted to hurt you. You know that, don't you?" Emma closed her eyes, trying to steady herself. "I don't know what's happening to us. I don't know what happened to the love we used to have." "Neither do I," Daniel whispered. "But maybe it's time to let go." The words hung in the air, cold and final. Emma felt as though the floor had dropped out beneath her, as though the life she had known was slipping away faster than she could hold on to it. But then something shifted inside her. She had spent so much of her life bending to other people's expectations, her mother's, Daniel's, even Margaret's, but she couldn't bend anymore. Not for him. Not for anyone. "No," Emma said, her voice steady now. "I won't let you go without a fight. I won't let this marriage die without trying everything I can." Daniel's eyes widened. "Emma, please." "No," she repeated, more firmly this time. "I'm not giving up. Not like this. You may be listening to your mother's lies, but I'm not. I'm going to fight for us. I'm going to fight for this family." Daniel stood frozen, his gaze locked on her. There was a moment of silence, a moment where Emma wasn't sure if he would leave her standing there alone. But then slowly he reached out, his fingers brushing hers. "I don't know if we can fix this, Emma," he said quietly. "But I'll try. For you. For us." Emma looked up at him, her heart swelling with a mix of hope and fear. She didn't know what the future held, or whether they could truly fix what had been broken. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a choice. And she would fight, no matter what. The following week was a blur of tension and uncertainty. Emma had made up her mind to fight for her marriage, but the weight of the situation, of everything she had discovered, was suffocating. Every time she tried to have a conversation with Daniel, every attempt to bridge the gap, it felt like they were speaking different languages. The silence between them was still deafening, despite her efforts to break it. But Emma wasn't giving up. Not yet. It was a Sunday afternoon when the breakthrough finally came. Daniel had asked her to meet him at a local cafe, just the two of them, away from the house, away from the tension. Emma, unsure of what to expect, agreed. She needed to talk to him in a way that felt real again, without Margaret's shadow looming over them. They sat across from each other at a small table by the window, the cafe bustling with life. Emma watched Daniel as he absent-mindedly stirred his coffee, his eyes lost in thought. He had been quieter than usual, more withdrawn, and it hurt her to see him so distant. "Daniel," Emma said gently, trying to find the right words. "We need to talk. About us. About what's been happening between us." He looked up at her, his gaze distant. "I know. I've been thinking about that too. About everything." Emma hesitated, then took a deep breath. "You've been listening to your mother, haven't you?" Daniel flinched slightly, and Emma saw the flicker of guilt in his eyes. He didn't say anything at first, but she could tell he was struggling with something. The silence stretched between them, heavy and thick. "Daniel," she said, her voice steady but firm. "You have to see what she's been doing. She's been manipulating you, using her words to control you. I've read the letters. I know what she's said to you." Daniel's eyes widened, and for the first time in weeks, Emma saw a crack in his emotional wall. He set his coffee cup down slowly. "You read the letters?" "Yes," Emma replied quietly. "I read everything. The things she's been saying about me, about our marriage." She paused, looking him in the eye. "She's been planting seeds of doubt in your mind. She's been trying to turn you against me, Daniel." For a long moment, Daniel didn't speak. He seemed to be processing her words, his brow furrowed in deep thought. Emma could feel her pulse quicken as she waited for him to say something, anything. Finally, Daniel exhaled, his voice heavy with regret. "I didn't realize how far it had gone. I knew she wasn't happy with our marriage, but I didn't see the manipulation. I didn't want to see it." Emma's heart ached. She had tried so hard to make him understand, to make him see that Margaret's actions weren't just about concern for him, they were about control, about keeping him to herself. You have to see it, Daniel, she said softly. She doesn't just want to protect you. She wants to own you. She wants to control your life, your choices, and she's been doing it for years. Daniel looked down at his hands, his voice barely above a whisper. I feel so stupid. I didn't see it before. Emma reached across the table and placed her hand on his. It's not your fault. You've been manipulated by someone you trusted, someone who's always been there. But it's not too late. We can fix this. We just have to start by facing the truth. Daniel nodded slowly, his gaze distant but thoughtful. I need to know everything. I need to know what she's done, what she's been saying. That evening, after their conversation, Emma sat down with Daniel, holding the letters she had kept hidden for so long. She handed them to him, one by one, and watched as he read through them, his face a mixture of disbelief, anger and sadness. Each letter was worse than the last, more vicious, more manipulative. As Daniel read, Emma saw the realization dawning on his face. The hurt, the betrayal, the lies, it was all laid bare in those pages. When he finished reading, Daniel looked up at her, his eyes filled with pain. I can't believe she did this. I can't believe she's been lying to me like this. Emma swallowed hard, fighting back tears. She's been using you, Daniel. She's been turning you against me for so long, and I didn't even know how to fight back. But we can stop this. We can stop her from controlling our lives. Daniel squeezed her hand. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. Emma shook her head. It's not your fault. We can fix this together. We just have to be honest with each other. We have to stop letting her tear us apart. The next day, Emma and Daniel sat down together to confront Margaret. They couldn't avoid her any longer. The damage had already been done, but it was time to take back control of their lives. They found Margaret in the living room, sitting in her usual spot by the window, a cup of tea in hand. She looked up as they entered, her expression unreadable. Margaret, Daniel said, his voice firm. We need to talk. Margaret didn't flinch, but Emma could see the glint of something. Defensiveness? Guilt? She couldn't tell. What is it, Daniel? Margaret asked coolly. I know what you've been doing, he said. I know you've been writing letters to me, trying to turn me against Emma. You've been manipulating me for years, and I'm done with it. Margaret's eyes narrowed, but she didn't speak. Mom, Daniel continued, his voice cold, you've controlled every aspect of my life. But no more. I'm not going to let you tear my family apart. Margaret sat back in her chair, her face unreadable. You don't understand, Daniel. I was only trying to protect you. I've always protected you. No, Daniel replied sharply. You've been controlling me. And I'm done letting you do that. Emma watched as Margaret's face hardened, the smile fading from her lips. You don't get it, do you? Margaret said, her voice low. You'll regret this. You'll see that I was right all along. But Emma was done. She had fought for her marriage, for her family, and she wasn't going to let Margaret win. We're done, Margaret, Emma said, her voice strong. You've had your way for far too long, but not anymore. Margaret's eyes flickered with something like anger, but she said nothing. Daniel turned to Emma, his eyes filled with regret but also a new sense of resolution. We'll rebuild this together, Emma. We'll fix this. I promise. Emma squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with hope. They had faced the truth. They had taken back control of their lives. And this time, they would fight for their family, no matter what. The days after their confrontation with Margaret were a whirlwind. The air between Emma and Daniel was thick with unspoken words, with the weight of everything they had just uncovered. But despite the rawness of their emotions, there was something in Daniel's eyes, a flicker of hope however faint, that Emma hadn't seen in weeks. They spent their evenings talking, really talking, for the first time in what felt like forever. They shared their feelings, their fears, their hopes for the future. The silence that had once choked their marriage had begun to dissipate, replaced by honest conversations that peeled back the layers they had kept hidden from each other. But as the days wore on, Emma felt the weight of the decision they both had to make. They could rebuild their marriage, rebuild their trust, but it would take time, patience, and above all, forgiveness. Could she forgive Daniel for his blind loyalty to his mother? Could she forgive herself for letting their marriage get to this point? Could they both forgive Margaret for the damage she had caused? The question of forgiveness lingered in Emma's mind, like a shadow she couldn't shake. It was a Wednesday evening when Emma and Daniel sat down together, just the two of them, in the living room. The children were at a friend's house for a sleepover, and the house was quiet, peaceful even, for the first time in a long while. Daniel turned to Emma, his face serious but soft. "We need to talk," he said. Emma took a deep breath. She had known this conversation was coming. "About what?" "About us," Daniel said, his voice steady. "About everything. I've been thinking a lot, and I need to ask you something." Emma nodded, her heart racing. "What is it?" "Can you forgive me, Emma?" Daniel's eyes searched hers, filled with vulnerability. "Can you forgive me for listening to my mother, for letting her control me, for letting her tear us apart?" Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She had wanted to hear those words for so long. She had needed him to acknowledge the pain he had caused, the damage Margaret had done. But hearing him say it, hearing him finally take responsibility, was both a relief and a heavy burden. She paused, thinking. "I don't know," she said softly. "I don't know if I can forgive you, not yet." Daniel's face fell, but he didn't interrupt her. "I've been hurt, Daniel," Emma continued, her voice trembling. "I've been hurt by your silence, by your lack of action, by your refusal to see what Margaret was doing. And I don't know if I can just forget that. I don't know if I can just forgive you and pretend everything is okay." Daniel nodded slowly, his face filled with regret. "I understand. And I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't expect everything to just go back to the way it was. But I'm willing to fight for us, Emma. I want to fix this. I need you to know that." Emma took a deep breath, her heart aching with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "I want to fight for us too, Daniel. But I don't know if I can keep pretending that things are the same. I don't know if I can go back to the way things were before." There was a long pause as they both absorbed the weight of the conversation. Finally, Emma spoke again. "I need to know that you're truly on my side now. That you're not just siding with your mother because it's easier." Daniel's eyes softened. "I'm on your side, Emma. Always. I wasn't before, and I regret that more than I can say. But I'm here now, and I'm going to prove it to you. I'll prove it every day if I have to." Emma searched his face, looking for the sincerity she desperately needed to see. And in that moment, she realized something important. This wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about rebuilding. About making the choice to fight, to choose each other every day. The next few days were filled with small steps, baby steps, but steps nonetheless. Daniel made an effort to reconnect with Emma in ways he hadn't before, no longer retreating into his work or avoiding difficult conversations. They talked openly, without the veil of doubt hanging over them, and Emma could feel the distance between them slowly shrinking. But the process wasn't easy. Every time Emma saw Margaret, she felt a rush of anger and betrayal, and she wasn't sure how to confront that. Every time Daniel mentioned his mother, a tight knot would form in her chest. One evening, after another awkward encounter with Margaret, Emma found herself sitting alone in the garden, staring at the stars. She could hear Daniel's footsteps behind her as he approached, and he sat down next to her, close but not too close. "I don't know how to fix this, Emma," Daniel said softly. "I don't know how to undo everything my mother has done. But I'm trying. I'm really trying." Emma turned to him, her eyes searching his face. "I know. And I appreciate it. I really do. But I need you to understand that this won't be easy. It won't be fixed overnight." "I know," Daniel replied, his voice filled with determination. "But I'm willing to do whatever it takes." For a long moment, they sat in silence, just listening to the quiet night around them. Emma felt the weight of the decision they had to make. The decision to forgive, to move forward, to rebuild their marriage, or to let go. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know if I can forgive Margaret. I don't know if I can ever fully trust her again. But I'm willing to try, Daniel. For us. For our family." Daniel nodded, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. "I'm with you, Emma. I'm not going anywhere." And in that moment, Emma knew. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new. They had faced the truth, the lies, the manipulation and the pain, and now they could rebuild together. It wasn't going to be easy. But they had each other. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. It had been 6 months since Emma and Daniel made the decision to fight for their marriage. 6 months since the truth had been laid bare, and the walls between them had finally come down. Emma sat at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee, watching the morning sun filter through the windows. It was a quiet morning, peaceful, almost. The children were already at school, and Daniel was getting ready for work. The house felt different now, more alive with the presence of shared moments and honest conversations. There were still days of uncertainty, moments when the scars from the past felt fresh, when Margaret's influence seemed to hover in the background. But those moments were fewer now. They no longer defined Emma and Daniel's relationship. Daniel walked into the kitchen, freshly dressed for work, and kissed Emma on the cheek. It was a small gesture, but one that meant everything. She smiled up at him, her heart light for the first time in months. "How's my favorite person this morning?" he asked, his voice full of affection. "I'm good," Emma said softly, her hand resting on her cup. "Just thinking about how far we've come." Daniel smiled, sitting down next to her. "We've been through a lot, haven't we?" Emma nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. "More than I ever thought we would. But I think we're stronger for it. And I think we're finally starting to heal." Daniel took her hand, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I've learned a lot in these last few months, Emma. I've learned that family isn't just about being together. It's about being there for each other, truly being there. I've learned how to listen, to you, to our kids, and to myself. And I've learned that I don't want to lose you again." Emma's heart fluttered. She had heard those words before, but now, they felt different. They felt real. "I don't want to lose you either, Daniel," she said, squeezing his hand. "I've spent so much time trying to fix everything, trying to make everyone happy. But now I realize, it's about us. It's about us being happy. Together." They sat there for a moment, the quiet comfort of shared understanding settling between them. The world outside moved on, life continued with all its ups and downs, but for Emma and Daniel, this was a new beginning. A beginning built on truth, forgiveness, and a renewed commitment to each other. Later that afternoon, Emma and Daniel sat in the living room, side by side, as they made plans for the future. They talked about their dreams, their hopes for the family, and the steps they would take to make sure they never let their love slip away again. Margaret had not been part of their lives for several months now. After the confrontation, Daniel had made it clear that he needed space from her, space to heal, to focus on his own family. It hadn't been easy, but over time, they had learned to live without the weight of Margaret's influence. They had taken back control of their own lives. Emma knew that their journey wasn't over, that rebuilding trust, repairing broken bonds, would take time. But they were moving forward, one step at a time. And for the first time in years, she felt like they were moving in the right direction. As they sat there, Daniel reached over and took Emma's hand in his. "We've come so far, Emma. I'm proud of us." Emma smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "Me too. We've made it through the worst, and we've come out stronger." The future was still uncertain, but for the first time, Emma felt a sense of peace. They had faced the darkness together, had fought for their love, and now, they could look toward a brighter tomorrow. And with Daniel by her side, she knew they would continue to face whatever came their way, with hope, with love, and with the unwavering belief that their family, their bond, was worth fighting for.